Welcome to CSS Apply Styles tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll be learning through the possible ways of applying styles to any HTML element. So there are totally three ways to actually insert CSS. It could be either using an external style sheet or using an internal style sheet or also using an inline style. So coming to the first option, it's applying through external style sheet. So for applying style through external style sheet, a link element needs to be present within the head section. And here we actually commented in this example, and we'll shortly see how to uncomment these HTML elements and uh, get and also to check how each and every manner we could actually apply style for the H1 element here. So in this external style sheet, the link element actually corresponds to the href attribute, which actually refers to the external style sheet file. And any external style sheet file is actually created with a file extension .css. And here we already had it defined, and let's just quickly check what is its content. So here you could actually see h1 is the selector here, and the color is blue, and the margin left value is to be 60 pixel. So let's quickly reload this web page into the browser and see how it gets rendered. Okay, so now you could see it's just the default, it's just using the default h1 value. So there isn't any style applied yet actively onto this element. So let's just quickly remove the HTML element by removing the HTML starting and ending comment tags. Okay, so now let's reload the web page here. Okay, so now you could see there's a margin which is actually added onto the left side, and there's also a color change for the first heading here. So let's comment this back and let's check the inline style sheet approach. So in inline style sheet, style element needs to be defined within the head section, and any styles which are actually declared within this style element would actually come under the inline style sheet, and those can be actually applied onto the corresponding HTML elements within that web page. So here we are actually having the H1 color to be green and the margin left to be 160 pixel. So let's reload the web page here. Okay, so now you could see then there's an additional margin which is actually added onto the HTML element, and there's also a color change, and now it is indicating in green color. So this is how inline style sheet can actually be applied. And in particular, to compare external and internal style sheets, external style sheet would be like one point change so that any web pages which are actually having common styles can actually be changed all of a sudden by just changing any CSS declarations just within the style.css. But if there are any specific changes which are to be part of that particular specific web page, then probably we could actually use the internal style sheet approach by having a style element and defining the particular CSS declarations within the style element. So let's see the last manner of applying styles using inline style. So let's just comment this particular element and uncomment the following HTML element. Okay. So here you could see the color is red, and there's an additional margin from 160 to 260. There's an additional 100 pixel margin which is actually added here. So let's try this one. Okay, so now you could see there's an additional margin which is actually added, and also there's a color change to red here. So now this is actually being applied from the inline style for that particular HTML element. But it's often advisable not to use the inline style as much as possible, so because with this kind of approach we would be mixing the styles with the content directly, and this could actually gradually lead to maintenance issues if there are too many content and styles overlap things happening around the web application. And with this we actually covered the three ways of applying styles, and we could also check for few other scenarios, say like say if the same properties are actually defined within multiple style sheets, how it could be overridden. We could also try that one also. So let's just remove the comment tags for link and style elements here. Okay. So now we actually had H1 selected to be defined even in the external style sheet and also in the internal style sheet. But what happens here is like the link is actually defined first and the style is actually defined later. So it's always the last element which is actually defined would actually be applied. And in this case, as the style is actually defined after the link, the H1 selector corresponding to the style would actually be applied finally onto that particular HTML element. So let's also remove the command for this h1 element here, and let's reload and verify that. Okay, so now you could see it's the green, which is the inline style, which is actually being applied. And just in case if we actually reverse the order here, and let's have this element after the style element. And now, as per what we discussed, it would be the link CSS declarations which would be applied. So let's reload the web page and verify. Okay, so now you could see it's actually corresponding to the color blue, which is the actual CSS declaration within the style.css here. So on an overall, when styles are to be applied commonly, so there could be multiple styles which could be specified, and when a particular HTML element needs to be rendered, so all the styles would actually cascade into a new virtual style sheet by having a priority order of applying CSS styles. So for always, it's the highest priority would be the inline style, which is actually defined within the HTML element and which is actually followed with the priority order of the external or inline style sheets. And the lowest order would be always the browser default values. So in this example, we could actually uncomment this h1 element here, which is actually having an inline style, and we could see which is actually being applied finally. As per what we just discussed, it should be the inline style, which should be always in the highest priority order. So let's verify that. Okay, so now you could see the color is actually red, and this is actually corresponding to the first heading, which is actually defined here in the inline style. So with this, we actually discussed about different ways of displaying and applying CSS styles onto HTML elements, and also the precedence order when multiple styles are actually being applied to the same selector. And with this, we actually covered the apply styles tutorial. Thanks for watching the video.